Okay, the goal of the webinar must be determined before you start it. If you're going to sell something through the webinar, you're probably doing the wrong thing. I like to do webinars to get people into the phone. You must demographically define your audience. You must get a message to them that is oriented towards what they'll learn. So spend 25 or 30 minutes with me. Long webinars aren't working anymore unless people are buying the webinar. So it's an educational training session. So 25, 30 minutes. All I want to know is who out of the 5,000 has interest in the results that I'm promising. If you aren't a very good speaker, please join Toastmasters. They'll help you become very proficient in doing this. There are webinars to demonstrate software, there are informational webinars, prospecting webinars, and then webinars where you can actually close your transaction. My goal is to get prospecting to the top of the list. I don't know how to close a POS system over a webinar, but I know how to sell somebody on going into my funnel through a webinar. That's the goal of the webinar. You can promote the webinar with LinkedIn, with email. Repetition is the key. One emailing will not do it overall. If you want a large audience, you're going to have to email and phone and perhaps postcards. Work with partners or joint venture folks to get to there. And then always use the so what exercise. I'd like you to come to my webinar. They'll say so what. You have to give them the answer to the so what before you go too much further. Select that presenter and please rehearse. And I've been on some webinars where people were just horrible. And it was like, well, I attended one last week. It started 22 minutes late. So I'm sitting there saying, I wonder how many prospects have said, this guy is not going to do very professional work for me. Then he came on, and I could see the mouse moving, the slides moving, but they hadn't unmuted his microphone. So everyone is typing in, can't hear you, can't hear you. And then he comes back 27 minutes and says, oh, we have a technical problem, I'll start over. How many of you all have enough time to sit for half an hour to watch something like that? I think you all would have said, oh, gotta go, I think I'm gonna watch the grass grow outside. So, be professional, dry runs, practice, practice, practice. Now, I mentioned earlier that I was raised by a fighter pilot. My dad was one of the Tuskegee Airmen. They flew combat in World War II. If you're not familiar with that group, it was part of the segregated Army Air Corps back in those days. And they had the best flight combat record in history. They had 15,333 missions against the Germans without a loss. 15,333 without a loss. The reason they were that good is they had hundreds, literally hundreds of hours of combat practice for every 10 minutes of actual combat. Unlike what you see in the movies, most dogfights lasted for seconds, if not a few minutes. The movies had to go on for hours. Let me get a sandwich. Reality is you had microseconds, nanoseconds to make decisions. So by practicing and rehearsal, they got to be very good. We don't do enough of that practicing and rehearsing in our business. So I'd like you all to consider following the Tuskegee Airmen's